In this video, we'll talk about Function.Apply in JavaScript. To do that, I will start by defining an object called person. This object has a method or a function called full name, and the function will return this dot first name plus this dot last name. Now there's something very interesting here, that this object doesn't have a value called first name and last name, right? So whenever we use this inside an object, we're always referring to this particular object, or whenever we use this inside a function inside an object, we're always referring to the values inside the object, right? So like, let's say this JavaScript would assume that first name and last name are inside this object, right? So just keep that in mind. Now we'll define another object called person1. But the interesting part is that this object called person1 will have first name and last name. Okay. And now we'll say document.write person.fullname.apply person1. So now let's see what happens, and then we'll go over the code. So now you'll realize that this is very similar to function.call, right? So the previous video in this series, which was about function.call, so function.apply is very similar to that, right? What's happening here is that we have an owner function, which is owner object, which is person. By owner object, I mean this is the owner of an object, the owner of a method that we'll be using another object. So person1 is another object, right? And we're using the values of person1, first name and last name, and calling a method inside the owner object, right, using apply. And this is very similar to call, because in call also you do the same. You take the owner object, you call a method inside the owner object, and you pass the object's values for which you want to call that method inside call, right? The keyword called call, right? So we're doing very similar with apply as well. Now the difference here, you would ask that what's the difference between call and apply? Why do two different things exist, right? So the difference between call and apply is that the call method takes arguments separately, whereas the apply method takes arguments as an array. So in the previous video, I've already shown you how the call method takes arguments, right? And in this video, I'll show you how the apply method will take arguments. So let me remove all this till here. And here, let's say city and country, which are two arguments inside this function. And here we'll say comma plus city plus comma and plus country. Okay. Then we'll say where person1 is equal to first name John, right, and last name Doe. Now we'll say document.write person.fullname.apply person1 comma Oslo and comma Norway, closing the brackets. So it's giving me some kind of an error, not sure what's wrong here. Document.write person.fullname.apply person1 comma Oslo comma Norway. Everything seems to be okay. Let's see what happens. Okay, there is some issue. Yes, the issue is that there is no closing double quotations there. Now hopefully it should work, maybe. Let's see. No, now also it's not working. Okay, because there's no closing double quotes here as well. Now it should definitely work, right? So now we get John Doe, Oslo and Norway. Now in the previous video with function.call, you may have seen that you don't have to use an array to pass these two arguments into this function. But with apply, you have to use an array notation or these square braces to pass the arguments into this function, right? So basically what a call is doing, apply is doing the same thing, but just to pass the arguments, if you want to use arguments, right, with like city and country in this case, we're passing city and country in this function, you just need to use an array with apply. That is all. And if you're liking these videos, then do subscribe, and thanks a lot for watching.